Hey, let's have some fun. Here's the next episode of the indefinite series, How to Have Fun in Destiny. Every other week, I'm uploading a video that details a new build for Destiny, which hopefully breathes some fresh air into your experience and invites you to try something unique. Each of these builds balances competitiveness with weirdness because I like nestling right between trying and chilling. For today's episode, we'll be floating high above those aerial effectiveness changes, gliding through the air with our Wings of Sacred Dawn, raining down some huge damage from Hawkmoon. Like most of my fun build recommendations, there's not a huge amount of complexity, and this build is no different. Combining heat rises with the Wings of Sacred Dawn is not a complicated idea, nor is it a new idea, but that's not the point. The point is that it just feels so incredibly good to use this combination with Hawkmoon. It's immensely rewarding. After losing so much of our aerial freedom as of late, being able to ignore the airborne penalties we incur when we jump feels really good, like we're getting back to the past, where jumping and hitting shots felt attainable and it was rewarding. With this build, not only will you find yourself floating above your enemies in sight lines that they won't expect, which means you can get more Hawkmoon shots off, but you'll also feel floaty in an emotional, nostalgic way, and that's just nice, isn't it? These days, you experience penalties to your aim assist cone, your precision cone, and your accuracy cone every time you're in the air. Now, you need at least 60 airborne effectiveness stat on primary weapons to ignore the accuracy airborne penalties, though notably, you'll still experience a smaller aim assist cone and precision cone. And then on the flip side, you need 100 AE stat on your special weapons to ignore the accuracy airborne penalties. That's tough to attain and requires you to build into it, but ironically, one of the best ways to do this is still by using one of the best classes in the entire game, Top Tree Dawnblade. And yeah, I will forever be calling the Heat Rises Icarus Dash setup Top Tree Dawnblade because that's just what it will always be. Point being, this class has always been incredibly oppressively good and is even stronger these days now that it's hard to build into AE. But when you consume a solar grenade to give yourself Heat Rises, it gives you an added 70 AE points. If you pair this with Hawkmoon's intrinsic 26, you're already at 96 AE, which is incredibly high. At this point, using Wings of Sacred Dawn for the added 50 AE is totally overkill because going over 100 does nothing. However, there are three other main reasons to use Wings of Sacred Dawn besides this. First off, Wings of Sacred Dawn providing 50 AE means that you don't always need to use Heat Rises to hit shots with Hawkmoon, since you'd be at 76 AE total with Hawkmoon and Wings, and that's decently high on its own. It does feel easier to land shots with Heat Rises when you have 100 AE, but Wings of Sacred Dawn at 76 with Hawkmoon still allows you to have a lot more flexibility in that you don't always need Heat Rises active. Second, Wings of Sacred Dawn provides 25% flinch resistance and 15% damage resistance when you're aiming your weapon mid-air. When you aim your weapon down sights, it suspends you in mid-air, similar to how Heat Rises does, but this perk called Tome of Dawn activates, which gives you those added flinch and damage resistance benefits. The perk usually lasts 2.8 seconds long, but you can extend it by just doing damage with any weapon while you're suspended in air. Third, and this point kind of combines the previous ones, Wings of Sacred Dawn is just like an aerial stag. Think about it. Because Hawkmoon requires you to stack precision hits before you get the 2-tap, 1-tap to the head or 1-tap to the body perk, it's immensely important to be able to keep yourself in fights just a little bit longer so you can land more crits. And if you're floating high above common sightlines with not only flinch resistance, but also damage resistance and high aerial accuracy, you're going to be a force to be reckoned with. You'll be flitting around the sky like a little sparrow, collecting your little nuts and berries of precision hits, and then you'll take them back to your nest, charge yourself up into Falcon mode, and go caw someone with a 1-tap to the head or the body. It feels very good. I say Wings of Sacred Dawn is like the aerial stag because it has the same Hawkmoon strategy as stag, which is that because you get damage resistance, you can stay in fights just a little bit longer to land more crits before you have to duck into cover, and that's absolutely ideal for Hawkmoon. However, I'd argue Wings of Sacred Dawn is even better than the stag because you can go anywhere you want with it and you aren't confined to one small space on the ground with your rift. Not to mention, you also get to use Icarus Dash and all that other good stuff like Celestial Fire, which are the things that have really made Top Tree Dawnblade such a menace historically. Also, I really like pairing this build with Phoenix Dive because that just synergizes so nicely if you find yourself too high in the air and you need to descend quickly. It also gives you ×2 cure to yourself and any allies within 9 meters, and then if you have Heat Rises active, you also get restoration ×2 for 1 second, and you do 100 damage with some scorchy goodness to any enemies within 5 meters of where you land from the Phoenix Dive. Another two quick things to note are the cure you get from consuming your grenade when you pop heat rises, which is just kind of nice for survivability, even if you're not planning on floating, and the fact that firebolts recharge extremely quickly. Speaking of which, here's the armor setup and the subclass setup that I'd recommend for this build. First up, mobility and intellect in this one just really don't matter. Resilience would ideally be 100 because you need as much damage resistance and flinch resistance as possible. Recovery would ideally be decently high, if not 100, because it's just an extremely good stat, but it's also nice to get your Phoenix Dive back as quickly as possible. Discipline would ideally be 100, just like resilience, because you want to be activating heat rises as much as possible. I even enjoy using solar grenades on this build if I have 100 discipline and double bomber. It still feels like I'm able to activate heat rises plenty often, and then I have an actually useful grenade compared to firebolts. Sorry, firebolts. Plus, like I said earlier, you don't actually need heat rises all the time because Wings of Sacred Dawn and Hawkmoon will still give you 76 AE, which is quite nice. As for strength, that's a lower priority, but still important since Celestial Fire or the Snap Dash move are both powerful and fun. For your Hawkmoon, I'd recommend high range and high stability, but not high handling because landing only a few precision hits gives you max handling for Hawkmoon almost instantly from the Paracausal Shot perk. I'd say most people are running Rangefinder on their Hawkmoons, including myself, and I probably wouldn't change that. I'd say having a shotgun for a backup, probably a slug, is good these days for defending yourself when you find yourself in the zone of bullshit. However, since Hawkmoon is going to be so incredibly powerful in this build and fun, you could just throw in a sniper rifle and take some crazy shots, or a GL, I don't give a f. All that matters is using Hawkmoon and having plenty of opportunities to float above your worries. I always recommend Eager Edge for the utility of flying around the map more quickly, and it's made more effective in this build when you pair it with Icarus Dash. And it's also just fun. Some other notable tips include using one hand cannon unflinching mod, which when paired with your 100 resilience and your stability on Hawkmoon and your Wings of Sacred Dawn, make your Hawkmoon like a laser beam. Also, using the hand cannon holster mod on your boots, which you should definitely have room for these days, is a great idea because you can recharge a few Hawkmoon shots for free without reloading and wasting your Paracausal stacks. You just put it in your back pocket and reload 1 or 2 shots and then take it back out, and you still have all your Paracausal stacks. Just be mindful that if you reload it to max, you'll lose all your Paracausal stacks, so you need to keep an eye on Hawkmoon when it's cooking away in your back pocket. I would say the best fragments are Ember of Benevolence, so you can recharge your other abilities more quickly every time you heal your allies by popping your Solar Grenade, your Phoenix Dive or something. However, there is something to be said for actually not playing near your teammates, so you have an easier time getting off angles to stack up Hawkmoon shots without immediately calling attention to yourself by being close to teammates. In that way, this build is pretty good for flanking. Other nice fragments are Ember of Singeing to get that Phoenix Dive back more quickly, Ember of Solace for longer restoration effects, and Ember of Tempering for even more aerial effectiveness. Also, Ember of Torches is never a bad idea. However, none of these fragment suggestions are necessary whatsoever, and your highest priority should be attaining the stat splits I mentioned above. So if you can hit high resilience and discipline, and ideally high-ish recovery and high-ish strength, then feel free to get some of those other fragments for the fun little bonus benefits, but far and above, your best fragment choices will be those that simply enhance your base stats. And honestly, that's one of my favorite parts of this build, the fact that it's so simple and doesn't require anything complicated. Complicated builds can be fun, but this one is just effortless. It's a walk in the park. It's like using an old reliable machine or tool or something that you just know is going to go well. All you need is Hawkmoon, Wings of Sacred Dawn, and an open mind. This is a perfect example of the types of build I want to highlight in this series. It isn't cheesy or overpowered or only good once per match, but it's just good old-fashioned fun. It's one of those delightful builds that shines when you put your heart into it and approach it with an open mind, willing to try something unique and have some fun. And I think it's one of the few builds in the game that is fun for me even when I'm losing, because it's simply so enjoyable to make it work and get a cool clip or two. On a more personal note, after I finished that behemoth of a shotgun video, which got very popular but totally destroyed my content creation stamina for a little while, after taking a long break, the first time I came back to Destiny and played some PvP, it was because I was interested in trying this very build. So in that way, it's near and dear to my heart, and I hope it works for somebody else, to bring them back in and allow them to have fun with Destiny, even if there are other parts of it that they might not enjoy. And that's perfectly fine. To me, that's the best part of Destiny, that you can enjoy parts of it, not enjoy other parts of it, and form your own relationship with it. You don't have to play, but if you do, you may as well play for fun. I hope you try this build out and have fun with it, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode of Fun Builds. Next up, I think you might enjoy seeing the history of Solar Warlocks before the Solar subclasses got reworked, so check out my video on the Season of the Well. Alright, thank you so much to all my patrons for making me want to quit my job and do this full time, and catch you in the next one. Bye bye.